Okay, back again on HTTP basics then in this active part of footprinting. So HTTP ports operate on port 80, right? And HTTP commands are something that security testers can pull information from a web server using these commands, right? And so a basic understanding is beneficial for us. And so we'll even look at return codes, right, which is going to reveal information about OSs, etc. So these are some common return codes. These are client error codes, the 400 series. 400 would be a bad request, so the request was not understood by the server. Again, these are client error codes. 401 is you're unauthorized, 404 is not found, 406 not acceptable. So the resource doesn't accept that you're sending to, the server doesn't accept your request. And 413 might be the request entry too large. Request is larger than the server is able to process. And those are really coding best practices on the application server side, right? Protecting itself. Those are protections on the server side. And it thinks the client is violating those. Now, these are some 500 series codes, right? These are basic server errors. So notice the difference. 400 or 4XX code is seen, as seen on the last slide, indicates that an error is caused by the user on the client side. Whereas these 500 series codes or 5XX codes, they tell the client that you did everything right, and it's the server itself that has the problem that's being caused. So if you know HTTP methods, you can send a request to a web server, and from the generated output, determine things like what OS the web server is using. And you can also find known vulnerabilities of operating systems by searching on for any exploits, and you combine the two and you are on your way. And so you as a security tester, you can identify companies of those vulnerabilities. So as I said, if you know the HTTP methods, you can send a request to a server. From the generated output, you can determine what OS the web server is using, etc. Okay. So there are other methods also of gathering information. For example, using the URL. With the URL, you can determine the web server, the operating system, and even the names of IT personnel. The other things that you can get from this method are cookies and web bugs. Okay, so a little bit about detecting cookies and web bugs. A cookie is a text file generated by a web server. So we have this client on one side and the server on the other. It's the client-server relationship. So the cookie is a text file generated by the web server, and it's sent to you, the client, and it's stored on your browser, on the user, the client's browser, right? Now, a web bug works with a cookie, and its purpose is similar to that of spyware or adware. A web bug is looking to get information about the person visiting the website, such as the IP addresses, when the web bug was viewed, and the type of browser used to view the page, etc. So since the data in the cookies doesn't change, the cookies by themselves aren't harmful. It's like Bluetooth by itself is not harmful, but you have to take care to secure it. The internet by itself is not harmful, but you have to take care, and that's what we're doing in this course, to protect it and seek vulnerabilities to further protect it. So cookies, back to cookies, they aren't by themselves harmful. They can't infect computers with viruses or other malware. However, we note that some cyber attacks hijack cookies, like cross-site script forgery, XSS forgery. You don't have to know that. I just throw that out if somebody wants to make a note. They can some cyber attacks can hijack cookies and enable access to your browsing sessions. And the danger lies in the ability to track the individual's browsing habits or maybe get in the middle, right? So it's a good idea to clear out your cache or browser history. Clear the cookies on a regular basis. Of course, the drawback to this is that your saved usernames and passwords will be deleted, and you'll need to re-enter them. But on the plus side, your privacy is much more secure, and your browser will work better. Now, as a security tester, we have an opportunity to recommend policy, support policy decisions, which are managerial tools in cybersecurity. Lots of tools, managerial tools, technical tools like we have been discussing, operational tools, administrative tools like HR, etc. Lots of them. Now we have a policy decision, which is a manager tool, right? Use cookies or not, clear browsing, cache or not. For example, you could make, going back to cookies, you could set so that cookies only remain valid for a very short period of time when you're live on a session. That would limit access to a potential hacker. Now, detecting cookies. So the web bug is next. Web bugs come from this third-party company, and those companies specialize in data collection. So because web bugs are just another image file like a GIF, they can't be blocked by a web browser or rejected by a user. It's just an image file, right? And so also web bugs usually match the color of the web page background, which renders them frankly invisible to us, right? So examining the web page's source code is how you'll find the file as an image tag, right? And security professionals need to be aware that cookies and web bugs are used to keep the information gathering tools. We want to keep these information gathering tools off of the company computers, right? So as security testers, we want to know how to verify whether a web page contains cookies and to clear the cookies like the cache. In fact, clear any cookies on the menu button, for example, in Firefox is in the top right. Right? Then you choose options, click privacy, click clear your recent history. In the clear all recent history dialog box, you want to unselect everything but cookies and then hit clear now, right? And there are other paths to do it in various browsers and other sites, okay? Now, web bugs are considered more invasive, just as a note, than cookies, right? You might want to go do activity 4-5 for fun. In the book, it's www.noprivacy.org. If you choose to go there, that will be your choice based on your sense of security. And you can try it for yourself so that we can feel safe. We can click on the web bugs tab. So note that Google creates incentives for site operators to share data by offering them premium services only to websites willing to share data they gather from the web. So Google kind of encourages these web bugs, okay? We want to be aware. Now, using domain name system, DNS zone transfers, right? This is another way to gather information when footprinting, right? A network, right? It's through using the domain name system. A DNS, of course, as we've discussed earlier or in other courses, is responsible for resolving the host name to the IP address and vice versa. It can go IP address back to host name, right? So we can now, instead of loading the IP address, we can load Google, and it uses the DNS to look that up in a fully qualified domain name, FQDN. So anyhow, that's beyond the discussion. Here, people would much rather memorize the URL than an IP address, is my point, right? Unfortunately, using our URLs comes with a high price. So we have these DNS servers. This is a major area of potential vulnerability. Now, after you determine what name a server is using, you can attempt to transfer all the records, so you will know how their DNS server is going to resolve, and that's called a zone transfer, right? So this can be done with dig commands, right? And to and you do this to determine a company's primary DNS server, and you can look at the DNS server containing the start of authority, it's called, or SOA record, right? And the start of authority or SOA record shows which zone or IP address the DNS server is responsible for managing. And after you determine the primary DNS server, you can perform another zone transfer to see all host computers on the company. The zone transfer gives you an organization's, frankly, network diagram. Okay, very important. And this is information the attacker can use. So this part right here, the zone transfer gives the organization's network diagram. Critical. Okay, so when footprinting, finding the IP address and host names of all servers, computers, and other nodes connected to the network is important. And the zone transfer of DNS records creates that network diagram. Okay, I think that's enough on that. So next we'll introduce social engineering. I mentioned it's related or tied to footprint, right? Footprinting. It supports the effort. And social engineering basically is how any conversation or interaction by email, by voice or phone, in person, etc. So when footprinting, finding the IP address and host names of all servers, computers, nodes, etc. is important. We can go ahead and apply social engineering. Security professionals' most difficult job is probably preventing social engineering from being used to get crucial information from company employees. No matter how thorough a security policy is or how much money is spent, employees are still the weakest link in the organization. It's one of the reasons we say in security that the best dollar spent in cybersecurity is education. Dollar for dollar, you get more return by educating your users. Now, random security drills can be used as part of that training to improve company security practices, right? And we want to train people not to be not to be impacted by the persuasiveness of the hacker, or being intimidated or coerced, or maybe through extortion or blackmail. Even kindness is a tactic. It's probably the most dangerous because people, as a rule, want to help, and convincing an employee that you're in a position of authority encourages them to help. So as a security tester, you should never use social engineering tactics yourself unless the person who hired you gives you that permission in writing. All test results should, of course, be confidential. Just keep that in mind. Okay? Social engineering has all of these techniques. Again, training the users not to give outsiders any information about the operating system, about anything. Ask the person on the other phone for their phone number, company phone number, and call them back. Maybe a way to do this, right? To not reveal the information up front, to verify the caller identity, and ask questions. The book even recommends this sort of form can be used. Maybe leave it out at each phone so that the individual has something to refer to. You may recommend that employees keep this near their phone as a security tester as part of your review. Okay, so there I'll stop. We'll come back for one last section this week. We'll start with the art of shoulder surfing.